Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to our UAS series. This is the third one, Flying UAS for Fun. It is a crash course. We do go fast, and the good news is you'll have a recording of this forever, and I'll send out the slides too. So, without further ado, I'm going to introduce my cohorts. On the other end, you heard Craig. Craig is the Fast Team Program Manager over at the Scottsdale FISDO. And not on screen is his cohort, Ernie Copeland, who is also helping with all of this in the background. And in the room today, presenting to all of you, are the two of us, Tony and I. Tony, would you like to do your intro?
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Sarah. So, Tony Simic, I'm based in the West Valley area in Surprise, Arizona. I am a drone service provider, and when I'm not flying drones for fun, I'm oftentimes flying them for work. So, very fun to present today, and looking forward to some great content.
Outstanding. Tony, were you intentionally not showing video?
Yes, I am saving some bandwidth until I'm back in the office. I'm
Got
about
it.
four minutes out of position. I was doing 2,200 acres of not flying drones for fun today. It
Ah,
was for work. So
lovely.
yeah, yes.
All right. Well, good. We'll see Tony's lovely face in just a while. Meanwhile, I'm Sarah Nilsson, a longtime pilot of manned aircraft since 1994, a drone pilot since we had that Part 107 rule in 2016. And I'm an aviation attorney in the state of Arizona since 2014 and also a law professor at Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University, what I like to call the best aeronautical university this side of the country. So, it is my pleasure to share with you today UAS Flying for Fun, the crash course. This is a continuation of our series this summer that we're having fun doing every um, 5 p.m. whenever we set the dates up. So, without further ado, what are we going to do today? So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to explain the recreational UAS rules. What are they? Why are they different from the 107 rules of commercial pilots? We're going to talk about trust, and that is not a thing between couples. That is literally an exam. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll talk about airspace authorizations and the LANS program, and then we'll touch on a little bit on FRIAs and fixed sites. And if you don't know what those are, no worries, we're going to cover them all. Like I said, throughout the entire presentation, we're going to give you a lot of material, all of it free, all of it at your disposal. Don't worry about taking notes. You will get this recording and you will get my slide deck. After the show, I will email everybody. Okay, so on that happy note, let's get started. What is recreational flying? It is that aircraft, when the aircraft, the drone it is flown strictly for fun. No work. You're not doing this to further your own business. You're not doing this for money or in exchange of services or anything like that. You are strictly flying for fun. And the exchange of money does not determine whether it is commercial. Just an aside, we will talk about that in a different show. All right. So the rule for UAS in general that weigh over or under 55 pounds, I should say, is in the national airspace is 14 CFR Part 107. That is your overarching drone law for the entire country. We call that the small UAS rule. And if you want to fly for purely recreational purposes, we have a limited, what we call a statutory exception, which is a carve out that provides a basic set of requirements. And the actual law is 49 US Code 44809. This is what the carve out is on 14 CFR 107 that allows you to fly for fun and not have to abide by all the 107 rules. So it's here that we're going to look a little closer under 49 US Code 44809. From here on out, for ease of speaking, I'm just going to call it the 44809. So this is only if you're flying strictly for recreational purposes. And we're going to get into this in just a second. Ooh, there's thunder. I don't know where you're at, but I'm in Prescott and we have a thunderstorm outside. So 44809 has a series of numbers, and I'm going to go with number 2. It talks about you're flying in accordance with the programming of a community-based organization. And that is, we're going to get into that, but just for the ease of description, a CBO is something like the AMA, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So their safety guidelines. You're following some kind of CBO's safety guidelines. And number 3, we're talking about flying within visual line of sight of the person operating the aircraft or a visual observer co-located and in direct communication, meaning within speaking range, with the operator. And of course, you're operating in a manner that does not interfere with and gives way to any manned aircraft. So these are recreational 44809, straight out of the rules. Number 5. Now, here's where it gets fun. In class Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, which you all know because most of you took the course on Thursday dealing with airspace, or within the lateral boundaries of the surface area of class Echo designated for an airport, the operator obtains prior authorization from the administrator or designee before operating and complies with all airspace restrictions and prohibitions. So we talked about that. We'll talk about it again today. It is the LANCE program. If you have a green in the grid, and we'll talk about the grid in a minute, you use your phone app and you go ahead and you get that LANCE approval. If you don't, then you'll go to FAA drone zone, and we'll also talk about that in a little while. So it says the aircraft is um, flown not more than 400 feet above ground level and complies with all airspace and flight restrictions and so forth. Now, there's an exception to that 400 feet above ground level, and we'll get to that in class Golf in just a second. Let's finish this rule up first. Number 7, the operator has passed the aeronautical knowledge and safety test, and that is the trust. I just mentioned it briefly. And lastly, the aircraft is registered and marked in accordance with, and we're going to talk about how that marking goes. Awesome. So now, 44809 has some other operations, which we'll talk about. And if you cannot comply with those 8 things that I just went through real quick, then you are not flying strictly for fun, and then you must comply with all of 14 CFR Part 107, except for if it is over 55 pounds, then there's a whole set of other rules on the 14 CFR Part 91, which I'm not going to get into today. All right. So, Tony, any questions before I head on
Yeah,
into the CBOs or any
yeah. Well, I'll just make one comment. Yeah, Sarah did a great job at providing what is the definition of recreation. I'll just say, as soon as you start invoicing, as soon as, Sarah said, as soon as it becomes monetized, that's when you definitely got to consider yourself no longer a recreational operator, or the proper remote pilot's license. So if you're posting on YouTube, that's great. You're a recreational person. You can certainly do that. If you're monetizing it, becoming a community personality, have lots of followers, and now getting a paycheck from YouTube, you're no longer a recreational flyer at that point. So it just means to
Yes, excellent. All right. So we're going to get into the weeds now, and we're going to talk about CBOs, the community-based organizations. On the screen, you're going to see something right off the FAA's website. AMA is at the top. There's 3, 4 of them. Those are examples of an FAA recognized community-based organization. So what are these safety guidelines that they speak of? These are safety guidelines are rules determined by the CBOs themselves that they develop in coordination with the FAA that their members follow. The safety guidelines are comprehensive and include all aspects of model aircraft or drone flying that the organization expects their members to do. They're submitted to the FAA alongside an organization's application to be recognized by the FAA as a CBO. Do CBOs safety guidelines need to include everything listed in the advisory circular? And we're going to talk about that, the advisory circular 9157C. And the answer is no. Advisory Circular 9157C provides application guidance for FAA recognition of CBOs. CBOs may tailor their safety guidelines for a particular type of model aircraft or drone flying, for example, gliders or FPV flying. It's a good idea to review all the recommendations in AC 9157 Charlie to ensure submitted safety guidelines consider all aspects of flying. So we're going to get into that advisory circular in just a second. And so you'll see 49 US Code 44809 contains this description or definition of a CBO, just like in the previous slide off the FAA website. It's straight out of the actual law. All right, so I'll just go straight up here. You can take a look. They're recognized by the FAA. They're described in 501c3 of the IRS, meaning they are nonprofit organizations. They're exempt under the 501 part of the IRS code, and they have a mission which is demonstrably the furtherance of model aviation. So that's how a CBO comes to do that, and that's how they come to have a set of safety guidelines. Awesome. All right. They provide programming and support for any local charter organization, and they also provide assistance and support in the development and operation of locally designated model aircraft flying sites. And here's where we're going to get to that at the end of today's presentation, the difference between a fixed site and a FRIA, and we'll talk about that in a little while. All right, so the advisory circular is mentioned in 44809. And we're going to talk about that right now. The advisory circular 9157 Charlie. Definitely download this. Definitely read it. Lots and lots of information. Just know that 44809 is the exception for limited recreational operations. So the advisory circular follows along with that same name. That's why the names you see there are similar. Awesome. So that's your advisory circular and that's your CBO stuff. Now, what about registration? So registration, if it weighs less than 0.55 of a pound and you're flying recreationally, you do not need to register it. But if it weighs more than 0.55 of a pound, then you need to register at FAA Drone Zone, just like you would if you were flying commercially. The person registering must be at least 13 years of age or older. If not, then your parent or guardian must register for you. Then you get an FA number and you must affix that to the outside of your drone with a label, just like you see in that diagram right there. You will pay $5 and that's good for 3 years. Now, if you're a recreational pilot and you have, say, 50 drones that you fly, you get to register one time for all 50, one $5 fee. This is starkly different than if you're a commercial drone operator and your drones each individually need their own registration number and each one will cost $5. So it's a little bit different if you're recreational, a little bit cheaper too. Tony, anything to add?
Well, it's and the expense won't break you. It's $5, to register it. It's good for 2 years. Uh, and the nice part about it, we all have crashes. When that happens, you are able to edit that registration and change your device serial number for that registration. So you can update your registration number that you obtain from registering that device with a new flight controller, which is also your remote ID number that gets broadcast. But I think it's one of the best bargains out there. I have no hesitation giving the FAA $5 per device. uh, and keeping those current. So very easy process. One other thing on this slide, you don't get a label from the FAA. You are responsible for either making or printing your own label. A lot of people will take, I personally hate this, but a lot of people will take a permanent magic marker to the case of their UAV. I prefer, I've got a nice color brother label maker, but then one of the good friends to the aviation community, Pilot Institute, I know they've had a long running thing about creating labels for hobbyists at no charge and sending those to you upon request. So that opportunity, I believe, is also still there. I hope I'm not wrong. I hope they didn't stop that program, but they make a beautiful label at no charge that sticks very nicely to most of those plastic aircraft.
Yes, yes, they do. Um, I was going to say something. You reminded me. Oh, yes, the registration. There's a lot of things that we're going to be talking about when it comes to registration. We have a whole different webinar for that coming up on July 31st. The registration and the remote ID and how you do that. Like Tony said, if you crash your drone and you want to swap the remote ID out, or if you want to just change the registration number for a different model, we'll get into all of that on the July 31st one. Just gonna go in here real quick. I see there's a question in the chat, maybe. Yes. Oh, good, Sam. Yes, Greg has been sending out those labels since day one. I love it. I love it. Love it. Yes.
I want to
All
say
right.
one word about that too. I believe he did that because of the and it's just a shame it has to happen, but there's a lot of fake registration sites on the internet that would charge you to register the drone an exorbitant fee, way above what the FAA was charging, and then in return for that, you'd get a label from them. Well, I think Greg partially, apart from the fact it's good advertising, it also really benefits the community by helping people not fall for those expensive label scams, I call them.
Indeed.
So,
Indeed. There
yeah.
were a lot of registration scams when this rule first came out. So very good. Good, good, good. All right. Let's go to next slide is the airspace. So I think we skipped. Oh, there we go. So before we get to the airspace, let's look at the before you fly, understanding the safety guidelines. I've given a link over there, and there's some basic rules for hobbyists, UAS recreational flyers. First off, never fly over people or stadiums of people. Never fly near emergency operations. This is very important. During emergency operations, it's important that the public safety officials and the FAA know exactly what aircraft are in the air and where they're located. If you fly your drone near these operations, they will ground their aircraft and not be able to do their job, which is very critical if they're first responders. This can be also particularly devastating during wildfires, and we're getting ready for that here in a little while. I flew this morning and we already had a TFR on the way to Payson because of a wildfire, so it's that time of year. Um, Never obviously fly your drone under the influence of alcohol or drugs. And then, last but not least, we also have the know your airspace you're planning to fly in, which leads us to that famous chart we already shared with you in the NAS presentation last Thursday. I put the recording in the chat box. So if you want to go back and watch that YouTube, it's right there. This is very important that you understand this chart. For the most part, you will be in Bravo, Charlie, and Delta, Echo, and Golf airspace. And remember, Echo 2, which we went over last Thursday, is the one where you need the airspace authorization. And if you want to know Echo 1 through 8, it's all in that video. Awesome. Chapter 15 of the Pilot's Handbook of Aeronautical Knowledge. Yes, this is used for us manned pilots, but also has a wealth of information on plenty of things. We talked about it in the aeromedical stuff when we talked about the eye, but in Chapter 15 of this very good manual that's all free, thanks to the FAA, you're going to get a breakdown of the airspace. And Chapter 15 is where you're going to find that regulatory and non-regulatory. You're going to see the two categories, and then you're going to see the four types: controlled, uncontrolled, special use, and other. And then remember, these categories and types of airspace are dictated by the complexity or density of aircraft movements, by the nature of the operations conducted within the airspace, the level of safety that's required, and of course, national and public interest. All right. So you're going to understand the airspace requirements. Remember, in class golf, you can go up to 400 feet, but that's not quite right. We're going to get into that in just a second. You don't need an authorization and you don't need to notify the airport operator in golf. Now, in controlled airspace, you need an airspace authorization before you fly. Remember, just because it's uncontrolled airspace golf doesn't mean it's a free-for-all. You still have rules to follow. And we're going to talk about some of those in a little while. All right, so let's get into Lance. Lance is the app or the system you use to download the app on your device in order to get your airspace authorization if you're in Bravo Charlie Delta Echo 2 airspace. So you're going to use an approved Lance service supplier or the FAA's drone zone. And in case you want to make note, LANC stands for Low Altitude Authorization and Notification Capability. Another great resource is on that link. You might want to go to this page, take a look at how this works. You've got access for drone pilots to controlled airspace at or below 400 feet. It gives you an awareness of where pilots can and cannot fly. Gives you also temporary flight restrictions, and we're going to talk about those too, and updates to special use airspace schedule. And then, of course, ATC professionals are going to use that to see where and when drones are going to operate. Here on the screen, you'll see the list of the UAS service suppliers. These are the people that offer the apps that you then download and take it from there. So all you have to do is go to pick which one you prefer, download it on your phone or tablet as you wish, and then you can submit near real-time authorization requests for operations under 400 feet in controlled airspace around airports. Remember that Lance is available to just Part 107 and recreational flyers. And requests are always checked against multiple airspace data sources in the FAA UAS data exchange, such as the facility maps. I'm going to show you some pictures of those in just a second. And temporary flight restrictions and NOTAMs, notices to airmen. And as I mentioned, if approved, you can receive your authorization in near real time. Here is your drone zone portal in case the airport or airspace you want to be at does not have Lance available. Lance is available in about 700 plus airports around the country, but if you cannot use Lance, then you'll have to do this application on the FAA drone zone and manually apply for authorization and then sit and wait a little bit. This is the same portal, by the way, the FAA drone zone, where you would have registered your drone and your remote ID. But we'll talk about that in the July webinar. All right, Tony, do you want to add anything before I go into where can we fly?
Yeah, don't be deterred if Lance is not available. When you do go for a authorization from Drone Zone, you can request a wide area request. You can request a range of time. I generally get them for up to 2 years. So you're not having to do it each and every time. There's a set of procedures you'll follow every time, but it's not a repetitive, punitive process at all. I think the FAA has made it very reasonable and easy to work with.
Excellent. So, where can you fly your drone for fun? So there are 3 ways a recreational flyer can operate in controlled airspace. Because we already said in uncontrolled class golf, you can go anywhere. Don't need authorization. But in controlled airspace, you do. So there's 3 ways you can do this. You could fly at an FAA-approved fixed recreational flying site. So that's going to be something like an AMA field. You could also fly through using Lance, like I just explained, or the FAA Drone Zone web portal. So those are your 3 ways that you can fly in controlled airspace. So where can you find them? So certain locations have received standing authorizations for recreational flying, and we call those fixed sites. A fixed site is a location in controlled airspace where radio-controlled aircraft and drones are required to have FAA airspace authorizations. FAA-approved fixed sites allow operators to fly there without the need to obtain individual airspace authorizations. The sites are represented as blue dots on UAS facility maps. And the UAS facility maps is at that link. You can take a look at it later. And you can also find a list of approved fixed sites, these little blue dots, on the FAA's webpage. Now, if UAS facility maps and LANs are new to you, please visit the YouTube channel. There's additional instructional videos for that on the FAA's YouTube channel. However, let's go here. In the fixed sites, we are going to comply with all the rules for recreational flyers, and in addition, there may be specific ones that you have to comply with. This is because in order for a flying site to receive approval, they must have a mutually agreed upon operating procedure established with the local air traffic facility. And those mutually agreed upon procedures must be followed by all users of that fixed site. So that's a little bit about fixed sites. Let's check for any questions. Tony, anything to add? I see some chats. Let's see. Is this intended for non? Yes. This is for William. I'm addressing William here. Today's presentation is strictly for recreational drone flyers. Go ahead, Tony. Ah, we see your face.
Yes, yeah, I'm on camera now. It's a great day. Sorry to disappoint everybody. Yeah, I think this is all pretty self-explanatory. The fixed site and controlled airspace, a great example of that would be a recreational flying club. There's clubs near me that have established their area as a FRIA, and I know we'll talk a little bit more about the FRIA here as we progress through the presentation.
Would you like to address Mike's question here? I fly mostly in remote areas. I use SkyVector to make sure I'm not flying in a wilderness area or bald eagle nesting area. Is there a better tool than SkyVector, which is pretty crude?
Yeah.
Yes. Go
Yeah.
ahead,
Well,
Tony.
there's so many tools out there, and I do think I'm familiar with SkyVector. I've used it. I do think it works great. Um, we've probably got a mix of ecosystem users, some using Android, some using Apple's iOS environment. I prefer air control by Aloft, so I like to use Aloft. It's okay. I think all of them have a lot of room for improvement. The key thing that you've got to do is just never be fully dependent upon the app. Certainly, before you charge the batteries and make a plan to leave the house and go out and fly, whether it be recreational or commercially, you know generally where you're going to go, hopefully. And you can take the time to look at your airspace on a big screen. I'm a little old-fashioned. The phone works great, the tablet's okay, but I really need a full-size desktop screen to really feel comfortable and confident. You're certainly avoiding those areas where you shouldn't fly by looking at that UAS airspace. So, no matter which tool you use, no matter which one you work with, back yourself up by doing a little bit of research on the computer before you head out for the day.
And I'll just add one more thing, Mike. Are you familiar with the FAA's aeronautical charts that are free, that are on the FAA's website? If you look up aeronautical charts, as a manned pilot myself, I use those, and they definitely delineate the wilderness area where they request people like me to fly above 2,000 feet AGL. Those are all marked on the aeronautical chart. So just give me an answer in the chat if you're familiar with the aeronautical charts and where to find them on the FAA's website. They're free. Now, I use a commercial product like ForeFlight when I fly, which they take those charts from the FAA and put them into a nice digital software that you can update and mess around with and make overlays and all that fun stuff. But the actual raw data comes from the FAA's Aeronautical Information Services, and those are all free of charge. So, Mike, if you want to just in the chat tell me if you are familiar with those, because those are also a good tool.
Yep. And I wasn't avoiding the air vector question. I just haven't opened up that app in a particularly in a while, and they do update all of those apps pretty frequently. So on any given Sunday, any one of them could be better than the other one, but they're all out there for your use.
Okay, well, while Mike's getting to the chat box, I'm going to
Yep.
go ahead and progress. So let's see. So what does 44809 say about fixed sites? You just saw how to locate them on the UAS facility map, so I'm not going to belabor that anymore. We're going to shift over here to operating procedures. And we already talked about how we do that in Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and Echo 2. So we're going to go through from there. Next one is do not exceed the max altitude that's in the facility map when you're applying for those aerospace authorizations. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. In uncontrolled, it says you have up to 400 feet above ground level without needing an aerospace authorization and above 400 feet with prior authorization, but that's not entirely correct. And now I'm going to tell you why. We have, and I just pulled this up for you because
Mhm.
I like AMA. AMA, this link, this PDF, very important. They, if you belong to AMA, you will be very happy. You probably already know this because you got the email. In April of this year, they were granted a national authorization, which from the FAA, allowing their members at AMA fixed sites in Gulf airspace to operate above 400 feet AGL for routine day-to-day activities. Now, based on their location in Class Gulf, their site has a new altitude limit of up to either 700 feet or 1200 feet AGL. And that's because of the overlying echo airspace in that region. It's very critical because you can fly higher than the 400 feet I just showed you in 44809. And this is extremely good if you're an AMA member. So we put that in there. Tony, anything you want to add on that before I jump into how good and useful the UAS facility map is?
Use those maps. Well, I'll just point out, so a club here in town that I'm a member of is Arizona Radio Control Society. I mentioned earlier I'm from the west side in Surprise. They've got a little park called Mustang Field that's out in the desert, and we're near Luke Air Force Base. We're not close to it from the field, but near enough. But even with that, the park was able to get that 700-foot exemption approved for the park. So I don't know if I mean, look, I think it's great if members enjoy that extra several hundred feet of altitude to be free and legal. I think that's great. Since I fly drones a lot, I love having all of my devices locked to that 400 limit. And just, I've got a mental roadblock. I'm never going to exceed that 400. But just be aware, it doesn't, even if you're allowed to go up to that 700 or 1200 even, just be aware other manned aircraft can operate in that space. And I'll give an example. A radio flyer club has a lot of old guys that like to fly their RC planes. And every once in a while, an old guy needs an air evac to the hospital because of a cardiac event or, some awful thing. But just be aware, helicopters can land right there in your neighborhood to take a crash victim or a patient to a hospital in short order. So never assume that just because you've got the authorization or that the airspace looks clear that it's going to stay clear. So sorry, back to you, sir. Sorry to give the downside. I don't want to make anybody nervous, but if you care about safety, you have to be a little bit nervous, right?
Exactly, Tony. That is so true. Matthew put a comment in here, and this is the very reason why we're having these kind of webinars, which we hope are attended by not just UAS pilots, but manned pilots as well. Because I feel like, and this is just my humble opinion, this is not the FAA's opinion, this is not anyone's opinion, but my humble opinion. I feel like UAS pilots are in a little silo of their own, doing amazing things and following rules and advancing their industry, right? I also feel like manned pilots are doing the same thing. Problem is, unless they're like me, where we combine both because that's our job, most times the two don't meet in the middle. And you're right, Matthew. The man pilots should be aware of where these fixed sites are. I can tell you from talking to man pilots, they don't use the UAS facility map. They use the aeronautical charts. And the aeronautical charts literally do not contain fixed sites. They contain what man pilots would use. And so an awareness of both is probably the best absolute thing. And just like Tony just wrote, each pilot has the responsibility to deconflict the airspace. The manned pilot, just as much as the UAS pilot, we have this onus on us to see and avoid. We have to see and avoid every other potential collision hazard. And that is why, Matthew, you have a absolute important point. This is exactly why we're doing these workshops, hoping that even if people don't attend, they can watch the recording. If they're manned pilots and they are interested in safety, they, we hope, would want to watch what the UAS world is doing so they can look at this and learn to deconflict. But very good points. Not to belabor that dead horse, let's keep going with this UAS facility map. You want to be really comfortable with this map. You want to be comfortable with the overlays. You want to use whatever overlays work for you. Check out your grids. Know the max altitudes in the grids. All of that fun stuff. And then remember, there's a legend for a reason. Study that legend so you know what all the little things mean. It's a game, I think. I like it. I play around all the time with this stuff because I'm a ginormous geek. Okay, let's talk red and green. So green just means, if you're looking at this facility map, that the FAA has already set up lands. You're good. You can just use that on your app. Red simply means you have to go through drone zone and get further authorization. It'll take you just a little bit longer. So in your planning phase, that would be a good time to go, oh, I can just get there and do it, or I need to think ahead of time and apply earlier. Maybe days, maybe weeks. I don't know. Tony, what do you think?
I've had it be days, I've had it be same day. In general, I believe a lot of the printed guidance is that it could be weeks. Of course, I think we all know the reality. The more sensitive the airspace, the more review it's going to get, the longer it's going to take. In all cases that I've had, I have been able to fly in zero grid airspace. I've had to do operations both at and near Sky Harbor Airport, some of them even on the airport property with the airport aware of it. But that's after going through drone zone approval and getting a waiver and coordination directions on how to coordinate. For recreational, I really don't think that's going to be needed. I think if you need to so badly recreate near the airport, somebody that's wise is going to say, heck no, there's no reason, and it's just simply not going to be approved. But just be aware, there is a facility to turn a no into a yes if it's required and safety can be provided for. But of course, as you see on the new slide that Sarah's gone to, there's just some very obvious things that you need to stay away from to avoid problems with both the courts and the court of public opinion. And rest assured, both are not on your side if you have an issue.
So like you see on the screen here, there are certain areas that have airspace restrictions and TFRs that, for example, that stadium, an hour before the game to an hour after you, it's a no drone zone unless you have authority to be there because you're filming the game. But you also have areas like the White House that is prohibited. So all of this stuff you need to look at before you go, as well as check out the um, TFRs. And so we're going to talk about TFRs next. Those are the temporary flight restrictions, and you want to make sure that you've checked those. They pop up quickly. I planned yesterday to go today on a flight from Prescott to Payson, and overnight there was a TFR for a wildfire in the way. So instead I went to Sedona, no big deal. But you have to check them even the minute before you get to go because they could pop up instantaneously. There's a video here I'm going to play real quick. It is explaining a little bit about TFRs and what they are. So recreational pilots, here we go.
The FAA manages our nation's airspace to keep it safe for everyone. As with cars on the road, there are rules that cover aircraft in the sky to ensure safety. During safety or security events, the FAA may restrict access to certain designated areas of our airspace for a specific period of time, much in the same way a city or state may block off access to a street when necessary. This is called a temporary flight restriction, or TFR. TFRs are issued for safety or security purposes. They restrict aircraft, including drones, from operating without permission in a certain area for a limited time. This can include around major sporting events, during national security situations, or around a natural disaster such as wildfires and hurricanes. At the request of local authorities or law enforcement, the FAA can issue TFRs to ensure safety for aircraft conducting hurricane rescue and recovery activities. These TFRs do not ban aircraft with proper authorization, including drones, from providing disaster relief and recovery assistance. TFRs are communicated to pilots through notices to air missions, or NOTAMs. Pilots must always check NOTAMs prior to flight. Active TFRs are also published on FAA's TFR list, which is updated in real time. The easiest way to see if one exists in your area is to filter by state. TFRs are also displayed in FAA resources for drone pilots through Lance and Before You Fly services. TFRs include details about who may get approval to fly in them. Typically, only public safety agencies, first responders, and other organizations such as media may be eligible for approval. To fly in a TFR, drone pilots must coordinate with the controlling agency listed in the TFR. The FAA's goal at all times is to ensure the safety of the skies, and TFRs play a critical role in this mission.
All right. So, just before we get to the next piece, I want to make a note that you might be confused because the name NOTAM has changed a little bit and then changed back and then changed again. So it used to be Notice to Airmen, then it became Notice to Air Missions, and then it's back now to Notice to Airmen. And the poor FAA has to spend, I don't know how much money and time making the changes on all their documents. So you'll see both for a while. Don't worry, it's all the same thing. It's just something you need to be aware of before you go flying. All right, so move that aside. We've talked about registration. We've talked about the safety guidelines. We've talked about checking the airspace. You might be asking, can I go fly now after all of this work? Sure, now it's time to go fly. However, there's some more rules. First of all, you must keep your aircraft within visual line of sight. That means you must be able to physically see the drone that you're flying. Now, there is a provision for all the first-person view FPV flyers out there. You can fly FPV as long as you have someone located physically next to you and who can communicate with you without using technology like a cell phone or radio. Literally, we call them a visual observer. So either the person flying the drone or the visual observer must have the aircraft within visual line of sight at all times. And that's a little bit different than commercial flying. The FPV flying has this rule. So keeping your drone within visual sight also allows you to stay away from any manned aircraft that may be flying near you. When you fly, you're required to avoid all manned aircraft, and I mean all. It could be an airplane, a helicopter, a glider, an ultralight, a hot air balloon, all of them. You must, as a drone pilot, the onus is on you to give way to all of those. It is your responsibility. And it is also your responsibility to know the altitude and position of your drone in relation to other aircraft, especially emergency response aircraft. All right, so what does 44809 say? It requires that all recreational flyers pass an aeronautical exam, a knowledge and safety test, and provide proof of passage if asked by law enforcement or FAA personnel. And so, what are these requirements? Skip to that. It is the trust. So, how are we going to take the trust test? Quite honestly, you will just go to the link, take a look at any of the service providers that administer the trust for the FAA, and then click on the link to learn about all the rules. Those are the 8 things I just shared with you. We also have the Before You Fly mobile app. There's other apps. You can pick whatever one you want. And once you've downloaded all of that stuff and read it all, you take the test. Now, how do you take the test? You are literally going to sit it as many times as you have to till you get it 100% correct. Once you get it 100% correct, and by the way, this is all free, you will get this trust certificate. Now, this is the certificate that you have to show law enforcement if asked. Carry it with you every time you go fly your recreational drone. And also, definitely have it with your drone registration as well. Those are always to be kept together. So the thing about the trust, keep in mind, when you take it, if you lose this document, you will have to take it again, because the suppliers don't keep records of who's taken it and who didn't, and they don't provide you a recopy or a new one. If you lose it, it's on you. So if you lose it, you have to take it over again. So keep that in mind. That's very important. Here is a little bit about registration. Drone registration a little bit different for Part 107 than recreational flyers. The recreational flyers have to show that to law enforcement. 107 do not. So keep that in mind about the ID. But you should always have your ID with you, and your drone registration and your trust as well. And then if you're a 107 pilot, you also have your 107 cert with you as well. Okay, moving on now to this. We know that the rules of 44809 apply to, hang on a second, we're gonna pause 1 second. We have a question. Oh, yes, that's true, Tony. You got that. Okay, good. You just take it once, as long as you don't lose your copy. But yes, one and done. It's not like Part 107 pilots that have to do recurrent training every 2 years. Okay, so 44809, we want to talk about recreational flyers now of UAS weighing 55 pounds or more, because that is going to be a little bit different. So keep that in mind. We have procedures for that. Let's go to the next slide. Here we go. So under 44809, if your drone weighs 55 pounds or more, then these are the things that you have to do. Just keep that in mind if you're flying a beautiful recreational drone that's large. All right, so we're going to go now to the remote ID portion of today, and we're going to literally explain in 5 seconds or less how remote ID interplays with your drone as a recreational pilot.
Not too long ago, flying drones and other unmanned aircraft seemed like something out of science fiction. But now, the future has arrived, and the number of drones, or unmanned aircraft systems, is steadily increasing each year. The FAA is committed to fully integrating UAS into our national airspace system. Remote identification of drones is a crucial component of these integration efforts. In short, remote ID is the ability of drones in flight to provide identification and location information that can be received by other parties. See how remote ID is helping to pave the way of the future and welcome the benefits these new entrants can bring. Due to advances in technology, more and more unmanned aircraft systems are taking to the skies, proving beneficial for aerial imaging, inspection, delivery, and other capabilities. Moving forward, we want to be certain these unmanned aircraft are flying safely and within areas they are allowed to operate. Remote ID will provide information about drones while in flight, allowing authorized individuals to ensure the safety of our skies. And it lays the foundation needed to welcome more complex drone operations in the future.
I'm going to go ahead and pause that, even though this is a really important part that says how it works, the technological part behind it. I'm going to skip that, assuming you'll be able to watch the slide deck later if you want to review and download all the good freebies we have in here. But in the interest of time, I'm going to move to talk quickly about the remote ID, 3 ways that you can comply with it. We have the first one, a standard remote ID. That's the one that broadcasts identification and location information. This is the one that is produced with the built-in, it comes with your drone kind of thing. The second one is a retrofit where you add a broadcast module to a drone. And the third one is where you don't need remote ID at all. You can forget about all that fun stuff, but you can only fly within a FRIA. And I told you we were going to get to this at the beginning. And a FRIA is an FAA recognized identification area. This is literally a defined geographic area where drones can be flown if they're not remote ID compliant. Literally, they stay in the FRIA with the operator and they stay within your line of sight. So where do you find these? Here's a link to the FAA's website that contains all the FRIAs in the United States, so you can figure out where they're at. And then you can go ahead and not need remote ID for those areas. Then we have the definition of FRIAs in 44809. And we also have another really, really good resource, the advisory circulars that go with remote ID, which is part 89 rule. And under advisory circular 89-3, you'll see a whole advisory circular just explaining what the FRIAs are and how they operate and what's what. All kinds of free information on there you can download later. So on the topic of really cool stuff, the FAA has a little pamphlet that you can download. It's a down and dirty. Here's all the things to do with FRIAs. You can print that off, keep that with your stuff. And then obviously when you register your drone, you will on FAA Drone Zone, there is also the ability to add remote ID registration into there so that all of that can be found. All of that's on the same website with all your other stuff. The 2 advisory circulars now that are very important, and I'm going to highlight this. What is the difference between a FRIA and a fixed site? We just talked about that. We're going to highlight it one more time. They're a little bit different. Remember, the FRIA, you can look at the advisory circular 89-3 that I just shared. That will be just explaining the FRIA. If you're talking fixed site, advisory circular 91-57, Charlie. And I see we have some questions. Let's see.
I
Okay.
think we're caught up on them.
Oh,
I've
you've
just
been
been
answering them.
yeah,
Thank you
multitasking. No
so
problem,
much,
Sarah.
Tony. Can
Yep.
you please put those links in the chat? The links, Sam, to I'll let you figure that out. You'll be getting all these PowerPoint in an email from me after tonight. But let's go into the FRIA versus fixed site. So here's the FRIA. You do not need remote ID. You operate visual line of sight. The operator in the aircraft must remain within the physical boundaries of the FRIA. And it's pretty much good for 48 calendar months. The persons who set up the FRIA will be doing renewals if they want to keep it going. Here's the difference between that and a fixed site. The fixed site is like your model aircraft flying field. Usually in controlled airspace, they can also be in uncontrolled airspace. We have one right here in Class Delta, a little tiny FRIA. There are 3 types of fixed sites. I'm sorry. 3 types of fixed sites. There is the ones that are available to everyone. There are the ones that are special purpose or CBO use only. And then there are those that are set up for sponsored events by CBOs. Just keep in mind, all of these are flying sites. All these are also going to be on your UAS facility map. So take a look at those. Awesome. Awesome. Here we
When
go.
it's a CBO, you'll know because you'll probably be paying dues to be there, and there'll probably be some rituals and rites of passage to go through to join the flying club or the CBO. The other thing that I should have mentioned earlier on the CBO, Sarah had mentioned AMA, American Model Aircraft Society Association. AMA also has insurance for its members when you have a loss or a claim that happens while on the FRIA grounds. So keep in mind, some CBOs have some additional terms and conditions and some member benefits that you may want to research or be aware of.
Very true, Tony. Very, very true. Okay, so for the sake of completeness, I just put this in there. The FAA can promulgate, meaning make a rule, any rule for recreational flyers with respect to operations, registration, and marking, remote ID, pretty much anything in the name of safety and security. So keep that in mind also. All right, we're almost there. So, really briefly, here's another resource. Not going to play it for you. However, for grins and giggles, my partner and I, a year ago for Drone Safety Day, created this little YouTube video um, for new entrants into the recreational drone flying hobby. And we made it kind of funny. He's from the South, so he has a very different accent than mine since I'm part European. So, fully European, really, part British. But you can share this with anybody who's here. They got a brand new drone as a gift and they have no clue what to do after they open the box. Just give them this video. It's funny and gives them all the rules. And I just put that in there for sharing. I also share this every time I do a webinar. It's my free ebook with drone laws for everywhere because we're just giving you the FAA's rules. You know that there are also rules that cities and towns and states have made for drones. And if you don't know what they are, this book will help you immensely. We give credit to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University for their Open Education Resources Office. That's how you get this book for free. I get the pleasure of updating it almost every day because I've got UAS and AAM in there, and there's a lot going on in that world. So, all right. Thank you for that plug, Tony.
It's a
Okay, at
no-brainer.
this point,
Yep.
here is your contact page with all the information so that you can get a hold of the FAA if you have to do any kind of reporting, if you have to ask questions, anything at all, you can reach out. And at T-3 seconds, we have questions. Any questions that we haven't already addressed throughout this webinar? All right. Yes, Mike and everybody online. After today, Craig gives me a list of everybody who attended, everybody's email, and then I will shoot you the PowerPoint slide decks. You have all the goodies. I believe Tony is going to create the YouTube video recording of this after meeting with Craig. And so within the next few days, expect all that info over there. Are there any further questions at T-2 minutes?
Best hobby in the world. I think everybody is really, hopefully everybody enjoys it as much as I do. I think you're all in the right spot and couldn't be a better hobby out there.
Yes, anytime you're flying, anything aviation, anything with wings, I'm just a big geek. It could be even a spacecraft. I'm all good. Anything that goes away from the Earth's gravity, I'm all right with. Well, looks like there
Sarah,
are no questions.
Sarah, can you hear me?
Yes,
One
yes.
quick question. Is it true that with our younger ones, the 13-year-olds, that they could get their license, they can take the test, but they don't get the actual license to their 16?
Yes. Now you're confusing the recreational with Part 107 commercial. So with
Okay, yes, I am.
yes,
Okay. Different class?
with a recreational drone pilot, you have to be 13 and over to register your drone. Otherwise, you have to have your parents do it. And then you can take the trust one time and be good as a 13-year-old to fly for fun. Now, if that 13-year-old wants to turn this hobby into a business, you have to be 16, yes. And then you have to take a whole nother set of exams called the Part 107 test, which if you've never flown manned aircraft, you have to sit a ground study course, then go to a testing site, take the exam, and then that certificate, the Part 107, that gets to be renewed every 2 years, which is free renewals, but you have to renew it anyway every 2 years. Did I answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you so much. This was an awesome event.
Awesome.
Thank you
Thank you
both and
so
Tony.
much. Thank
And
you.
I love that question about getting the young ones in. I've gotten my 14-year-old out there working on drones, and he's been helping me, and and it's just amazing to see how they think about the photography and the videography and the shots just a little different than the other generations, and they do such great work. So so great to hear that question from Salmon Drones.
Outstanding. Craig, I think we're at the top of the hour.
Yes, we are. And Sarah, Tony, fantastic job as always. Can't thank you enough.
Thank you, Craig. Take care.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Ernie. Thank you, Tony. See you on July 31st at 5 p.m.
Coming up quick. Take care, Sarah. Bye-bye.
Bye.